Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to assess outcomes. Now, this is a targeted webinar that looks at this particular genre of writing through the lens of an assignment that happens to be drawn from our healthcare administration program. But if you're writing an assessment of some sort to look at, is a program successful or not? Is it doing what it needs to? How can it be improved? Then this is certainly something where we'll be talking about principles that you'll be using in that assignment. So even if you're not in that exact class, keep watching and we'll get through that. Because of where we are in the semester, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the Writing Center services, except to say that these are completely free to ACU students and that you can make appointments with us for feedback, either in real time or via email. You can send us questions if it's something shorter, and we have many resources online, including paper templates and a complete archive of videos from our different webinar offerings. And so if you're, say, in HCAD, go ahead and click on that, and we'll see all the courses that have currently available webinars sorted by the assignment. So if you're, say, looking at something for a particular course, week 7, look for that, and if we have it available right now, it'll be there on this tabbed guide. All right, we're going to dive right in, and we're going to start with talking about core program assessment principles, program assessment as opposed to learning assessment. Then we're going to look specifically at HCAD 621's Week 5 assignment. This is the Policy and Health Outcomes Relationship paper. And then we're going to talk about how to do some outline and drafting to take the guidelines for the assignment and start planning out the paper that you write. So, program assessments. Now, the first thing to ask is what kind of assessment or type are you conducting? And the two main types are formative evaluation and summative evaluation. And a couple ways to understand the distinction of them. One is to look at, okay, the formative evaluation is trying to actively shape what's going on. The summative evaluation is more looking at and saying, okay, well, here's what happened. Now, because of this, formative evaluation is very interested in what you can do to change the process that's going on now. Now, summative evaluation can, but that's usually more, okay, well, the next time we do this, or the next time we do something similar, or people working on similar things to this program. And so there's different levels of detail and different focus in that, because with the formative evaluation, you're generally working with things where you don't have the same level of data and the same types of data that you would probably have if you're doing a summative evaluation. Here's an example. So the U.S. Department of Education collects statistics every year on PhD student graduations. Okay, how long did it take? What things happened along the way? It's a survey that, if you are a graduate student right now, you'll hopefully be completing in the next couple of years. And if you are doing a formative evaluation and you're collecting this information, there's a strong incentive to look at it sooner rather than later, because if people are saying, oh yes, there's this thing that's really annoying and you can fix it right now, that's good, responsive. Now, a summative evaluation, well, one of the ways that this data is used, not the only one, but one of the ways this data is used is it's compiled into big annual reports. So you can look and see, okay, how are universities across the country doing relative to each other? Now, that is not a bad perspective to have. But if you're, say, the head of a department or the dean of a school, knowing what the other universities around the country are and what the national averages are is not as directly helpful to your students as if you are collecting things to use right now and improve the process at your university as fast as reasonably able. So, which type of assessment is being conducted will affect the kinds of data that you have access to and what you'll be trying to do with that. Another helpful thing to consider when looking at a program assessment is what is the logic model, which is to say, how do things work here? How can you break down what's going in, how it's being used, what it's doing in the short term and the long term, and where this leads, the impact. So if it's helpful, the inputs are the resources that are needed to make a program happen. This can be many things, but money, time, expertise, and a place, those are usually higher on that list. As opposed to strategies, which are the specific activities or services or things that you're doing to service whoever your program is designed to support or assist. Now, there's a little bit of confusion that sometimes happens here because this logic model is using some terms that can be used in other contexts, but using them together to try and emphasize the difference between, in this case, short-term outputs, meaning things that happen in the nearer term. Okay, what happened? Now, if you are running a program and you are wanting, let's say you're working at a university setting, you want students to come in and make use of the services. Okay, great. So that's an example of an output. From the model, from the operations that are going on, you get this data that's generated of the number of people who came in. Now, this can be measured many different ways. Sometimes you have a security person there with a little clicker. Sometimes you have an infrared scanner. Okay, it's not bad information at all. But how many people are coming in doesn't necessarily tell you how people are using it, or if they are using it for things you intend, or if they are getting the things they want, which may not be the same things as you want. When I was working for one public university, we had a lot of people who came because they wanted a place where they could sit down and use a desk. Were they necessarily checking out books? No. But we could capture their contribution to the outputs by looking at, okay, how many people are seated in this area? How many people walk through the door? How long do they seem to be staying based on these counts that we have? Because if the count keeps going up, then probably people are staying. If it keeps going down, probably people are in the aggregate leaving. Now, outcomes, that's more on, okay, what's this going to do beyond the initial impact? And you might think of it as watching a movie or checking out a movie from the library to watch. The output could be, okay, well, we had one DVD or Blu-ray that has circulated. Okay, that's an output. But the outcome is like, oh, so what does that do? And in the short term, that might be something like, oh, you're amused, or the time passes, or your friends have something to use when you gather. Long term, it can be things like, oh, so you now have common cultural experience and the basis for conversation. If you think on first date, what are people going to talk about? They try and find some things in common that they both appreciate. And sometimes that's books, sometimes it's film, sometimes it's TV, sometimes sports, something else. And so these effects where things strange to the person before or not part of the normal habit are added or are now done in greater frequency or something else. These are the outcomes, things that have resulted from the program. And then we have impact, which is the long-term aggregate effect. If you go to college and you take a class, well, number of classes you take, that's an output. Completing the class and learning things, that's an outcome. Getting the degree, well, that's where we start going into this is impact, like the degree as an inflection point for whatever your future career is, or your arc through academia or the arts or whatever it should be. So breaking down the different steps of the logic model helps us identify how to sort information and also to look at that categorization and the results in each of these areas to try and state with some objectivity what's going on, and is this something that you define as being successful? And this brings us to what many people would say is the most important question to be asking, which is, what is the purpose of the evaluation? Is this something that's problem-centered that they're trying to solve? Or is it we're trying to figure out what's going on and make it better, but not actively trying to solve a problem? Now, that's going to really inform the kinds of questions that you're asking and how you're defining success. I'm reminded of a time when I was working for a conference of the United Methodist Church, and the bishop said, well, congregations are shrinking. By that measure, it's not improving. However, we're looking at the diocese and the annual giving from all the parishes, and that's going up. So, depending on what you're trying to do, are you problem-centered or focused on strengths, you'll have different things that you're looking on in the evaluation. And where they went there is saying, okay, we're not going to focus on the problem, we're going to focus on the strengths. In this case, what is this one parish doing that makes it raise so much more money? What can these other ones learn and to help support the cause that we're trying to promote here? At this point, let's take a look at the assignment details. So this is from HCAD 621. This is a Week 5 assignment, Policy and Health Outcomes Related. So this assignment is coming from the Healthcare Policy and Ethics course. And we're looking specifically at the Policy and Health Outcomes Relationship paper. Now, this assignment is asking you to assess a particular program, the Women, Children, and Infants program, that was originally developed at the Department of Agriculture. And this is a program that has evolved in many different ways. And what point you're looking at it but will have a significant impact on the data you have access to and what the goals are. Because if we're going to assess it by its original goals versus the ones presented now or the ones mandated by certain stakeholders, that'll be a very different thing. So let's look at the list of things here. We have first, assess the impact this program has had on the health outcomes and societal health benefit for women, children, and infants. So we have three groups there, women, children, and infants. Two separate areas, health outcomes and societal health benefits. Then we have this question, or prompt, to determine if it's been a cost-effective program. And that's something where we're going to need some information like how much was spent, what did we get out of it, and then what's our metric for this being cost-effective. And then we have evaluate the relationship of this funding policy with the health outcomes. Now, here's an interesting thing that comes up, especially in programs where politics are involved, and there are a lot of those. The stated mission of something may be different from what it is being empowered to do. We need to look no further than the Internal Revenue Service in the United States, the IRS. If the goal for the IRS is to accurately and timely collect taxes, then the current funding for staffing at the IRS is out of line with that. Now, if you have other preferred outcomes, or you believe that the IRS was overstaffed and auditing too many people, then you might say, well, cutting the staffing is good. That is an outcome we like. So looking at what the funding is in relation to the outcomes, different people fund different things for different reasons and don't fund for different reasons, and that can be true of government as well. So how you evaluate the relationship, starting with what is the relationship that you're identifying, that's going to be an interesting thing that dramatically shapes the content of this paper. If we take a look at the rubric, we see it is basically reiterating the things stated in the assignment instructions. We have about 16% of the score, the available points, going to, is this the right length with the right stuff, right number of references, formatted in APA style, well written and proofread. And so we see the balance of the points, about 84% of the grade, is from have you written these three prompts? Have you responded to these prompts? Alright, so with that, let's take a look at how you would start outlining and drafting this. And before we dive in, you'll want to grab a copy of our ACU course paper template. And we should also think about this assignment in context, because there's a set of readings and resources, and while the assignment instructions don't specifically tell you that you have to read a specific source, if we look at the module, we find that, well, there are a number of highly related things. One of which is this discussion question, where you're going to be talking with your classmates about this article that you select and how economic principles influence health policy. Well, that sounds pretty related to the third prompt here, to evaluate the relationship of this funding policy with the health outcomes. So if you start planning your paper out in advance, you can look at the discussion and preparation while you are doing your reading towards the goal of, oh, there might be something I'm going to incorporate. And when you are reading and responding to your classmates' posts, you can also be thinking, okay, is this a way of assessing something that I might be using in my own paper? All right, so moving from there, you can ask these questions as you're reading your colleagues' posts. What impacts have these policies being described had? And what types of economic impacts make a program or policy cost-effective, or make this type of program or policy cost-effective? And we see that there's several readings that have been marked for this module that may be helpful. Now, these aren't all in strict APA style, so let's take a moment and talk about what that will be looking at. Now, I have here a copy of our APA course paper template, and this is a short paper. There's no requirement for an abstract, so if you have this version of the template, just go ahead and delete that page. And so we want to have our cover page or title page, want to have the body of the paper, and we want to have references. And because we're going to be working on the references first, we're just going to take out this placeholder here, and we'll come back and talk about headings and divisions in a moment. So with this here, if we were to just start and copy and paste our references from the module here, we'd get something like this, where the formatting clearly is not an APA style, it doesn't match the rest, it's got bullets, it's got those links to an external site stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this clipboard here, and there is this option here, match destination formatting. Try that one first. So that gets the font looking mostly right. There's some hyperlink stuff we'll want to take out, but that's close. All right, so let's go ahead and grab this. And if you're in the home part of the ribbon and you select the styles pane, you have this pop-out window that shows you different style rules that you can apply. In this case, we're in the references section. I'm going to apply the APA reference style. And you can see that that has an immediate effect. We lose those bullets. We get the hanging indent. That's where this every line after the first one for an entry is bumped in ½ inch. And we've got some stuff that we can now go ahead and quickly take out, like this links to an external site text. Now, if we look at this, we see there is a link there. Okay, so we can place that where it's supposed to go in APA style, which is after the rest of the information. And if we were to do that with the Lancet article as well, it'll look like this. All right, now you can see that there is some access information here. So here we have this category that actually isn't part of the entry, so we'll take that out. And you'll see that these aren't quite in alphabetical order. So let's go ahead and we'll make Chalupka go before Gleed. Stuckler will go down after the public health, economics and methods. And let's talk about each of these in turn. So here we have the author, the date, the title, the series name, the link, Now, a series name is helpful, but unless it's the name of the publisher, that's actually not something we need here. So let's take a look. Now we see here this is an electronic book that is produced by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So that's our publisher there. So that's what we want here. Alright, now another thing here. When we have multiple initials, you need to separate them by a period and a space. Alright, now looking at this next one here. This looks like it's a journal article. Okay. See, we have this in comma we need to add. We want to change this to, because this is the name of the, well, let's see. Is that the journal article or the name of the journal itself? We have a link so we can check. Now, if you go ahead, you see that the journal is actually the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. And so the use of economics in informing U.S. public health policy is the title of this special issue, it appears. So now this leads to a question about how is this journal special issue cited and referenced? Well, to answer that question, let's head over to APA Style, the official APA website for having a quick reference to look at the principles and rules for APA Style. So we're going to take a look at journal article references, and we see we have journal article with an article number, missing information, etc. Now we have no special case here listed here. Okay. So one of the reasons you want to check there is that sometimes the special issues are numbered or otherwise coded differently. Sometimes they have a special title, but do we need that title here? Well, based on these examples that they have here, no. Okay. Now, there is a thing to keep in mind, that this is only a small selection of the rules in section 10.1 of the APA 7th edition manual. Now, I happen to have mine here in front of me, and I can tell you that on page 319, example 12, there is a specific description of how to cite a special section or special issue in a journal. Now, if it's something where there is a, it's just a themed thing and you're just citing an article within it, then it doesn't need to have a special citation or reference. But if it is something where we're citing the issue as a whole, then yes. So let's take a look back at what we're examining. So if we look at this, we see, supplements S1 to S84. That would be very long for a whole article to be spanning all those pages. When we look at this, in fact, that is the citation for that. So long as we're referring to the journal as a whole, you would go ahead and use the format that I'm going to show you. If you are using just one of these articles within it, then you would reference and cite the individual article. But let's take a look at what we're going to be doing here. So first thing we need to do is, this is designating who the editors are. So we need EDS period. Now, this is the title of the special issue. So this should not be in italics. It should also be in sentence case, so we'll want to go ahead and set that to lowercase, and that to lowercase as well. And now we need to get the name of the journal here. Now, AJPM, that's the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. sorry, the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, which is not the same thing as preventative. That's a different journal. So we have this here, and the supplement 1, well, let's take a look at the website. And we have issue 5, supplement 1. Okay, so now where would that go? That information would normally be encoded here in the parentheses. Now, the rule here, and you can see this on page 319 of the AP manual, is write the issue number exactly as shown in the publication. So that's going to be 5, supplement 1. Now, some will use S1, but in this case, they're using S1 for the first page of that. So we go by what the journal uses, even if it's something we're like, well, that looks like it could be abbreviated. All right. Now, if we look at this next one, this is a URL. We'll come back to that. We have this issue of the Lancet, okay, and we want an N dash there instead of just a hyphen. Okay, now the question is this a newsletter, a newspaper, or a journal? And, well, actually, if you go to the Lancet website, it'll refer to all of those. So it's not incorrect to have the August there, because you can do that for something that is issued monthly. It would also not be incorrect, because it's this kind of in-between thing, to take that out. Either is fine, and there's a whole section of the AP manual that talks about these instances of use one that seems to fit best. And the Lancet, although it is published very often and does emblazon the month on some of the things, it is, in functional terms, most similar to a scholarly journal of the different options, that the categories it fits into. So let's go with that. Now we have this CDC, a link here. So let's go ahead and see what that brings up. What are we looking at? Okay, this is a page, Public Health Economics. It's on the larger CDC website within the Public Health Professionals Gateway. Okay, so how would this be cited? Well, we're going to need that URL, and we need to start rearranging some of the information, because it's not Center for Disease Control and Prevention, it's Centers. So that is our author. So this goes at the start. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Do we have a publication date? Well, if we look through here, we have page last reviewed. Okay, that's going to count for our purposes here. And then we have the title of the website. Well, let's see. This page is Public Health Economics. Note that this URL does not actually lead to something that says economics methods. That is a subsection within it. The title of the page, as given in the heading here, is Public Health Economics. So this is why you always want to look at the source and make sure that you are correctly understanding everything that is being presented. Alright, now that we have got that sorted out, we need to put that in alphabetical order, and here we have our sources here. Alright, now let's take a look at the process of building up the course paper outline. Alright, so now we need a copy of the assignment instructions. Alright, so we started out with the instructions here. And let's go ahead and let's bold and italicize that so it's easy to see what's the instructions. So you can just start adding bullets here. So let's go ahead and do that. And say OK. We're going to introduce WIC. And okay, well, let's ask some questions. first of all, what is it? Or with whom does it operate? And then for this kind of assignment where they're telling you the program, make sure that you treat the reader as being someone who's reasonably intelligent but not necessarily versed on this. You need to tell them, okay, what is WIC? What is it? How long has it been around? What does or who does it work with? And what are you doing in this paper? What kind of assessment are you doing? And you can refer back to the earlier slides if you want for some ideas there. And this is basically outlining what you're going to discuss. And we look at this, okay, assessment. Has it been cost effective? And it's basically laying out the main themes here. Okay, we have assess this, okay. And the general direction is that we have three choices. Has it improved, worsened, or stayed the same? Okay, what are the benefits for these three groups? And that's just looking at this and saying, okay, well, tell us what these things are, and what are they for these, and it could be a positive benefit, I hope it is, but it also might not. Okay, so this next one, has it been a cost-effective program? Well, start with a yes or no, which one has it, and then why, and then tell us what's the criteria being used. And you can expand like that. If we look at the next one, evaluate the relationships with the health outcomes. Okay, that's going to be some data stuff. And other things possible as well. But for our purposes here, we're going to say, okay, and you're also going to need a conclusion. Now, this is a 3 to 4 page paper, not counting the cover page or the references. So we want to make sure that it is organized clearly. Now, there's not going to be a heading for the introduction, but here we can definitely say, okay, impact on health, or even WIC's impact on health outcomes. And societal health benefits. Is it fancy? Is it poetic? No, but it is tells us what you're going to be discussing, and that comes from here. And you can look at this and see, okay, cost effectiveness. All right, now for formatting these headings, we're going to use these shortcuts here. This is for the styles pane here. So home, styles pane, this pops out. And this will be a level 1 heading because it's the first one in the document. And then second one is going to be cost effectiveness. Relationship with health outcomes. And then our conclusion. Now, with this in mind, you can look at the reading and say, well, what does that suggest? Now, if you're looking at this question of, okay, the health outcomes, Well, we look at this and we see, okay, mechanisms of legal effect, perspectives from economics, possibly. Let's see, the public health effect of economic crises and alternative policy response. In terms of looking at this, there's probably some metrics there, because if they're looking at the different policy responses, that looks like it's a comparative thing, especially since they're saying it's an empirical analysis. And so by looking at that, you'll probably be able to find some ways that you can continue with this question. What does the data show? Well, what's the data you have access to? And if we look at our sources here, one of these happens to be public health economics at the CDC website. So again, going in with the outline prepared, where you know, okay, this is what the assignment is asking me to do. I know I'm going to have to be writing about these types of things. Then you can look at the reading as you do it with the eye towards, okay, what will be coming in handy? What will I be using for this? What can I save time by making this shopping list, so to speak, of information that you take as you go wandering through each of the readings, or in the metaphor, shopping center or supermarket. Now, that's all we have time for today, but if you have any questions, feel free to write us at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu to sign up for an appointment, or just visit the Online Writing Center website for more videos, tools, templates, and other information. Have a good night, everyone.